Are you ready for another Karen meltdown? Here we go. Karen, the iron-fisted HOA president, has always been a stickler for rules, but lately her obsession with maintaining the tranquility of the neighborhood has reached absurd levels. She pushes through a new noise ordinance policy during an HOA meeting where most people are too intimidated to oppose her. The new rules are intentionally vague, stating that any noise deemed disruptive to the neighborhood's peace is grounds for fines and citations. With her power bolstered by this flimsy regulation, Karen seems gleeful as she announces her commitment to keeping our community peaceful and pristine. Within days, Karen starts issuing noise warnings to various residents over trivial things, children playing too loudly, someone mowing their lawn during quiet hours, and even a neighbor's wind chimes. However, her true fixation is me. According to Karen, my backyard is the biggest source of unnecessary disturbances in the entire neighborhood, and she's determined to make my life miserable. Karen's assault begins with a letter plastered to my door. It claims that my backyard gatherings are a continuous disturbance to the peace and harmony of the community. Never mind the fact that my so-called parties are small dinners with friends or family, and they're always wrapped up before 9 p.m. But Karen doesn't care about facts, she cares about control. Over the next few weeks, the complaints roll in like clockwork. One letter accuses me of throwing a wild, disruptive party on a Tuesday evening, a day when I was actually out of town for work. Another claims my dog, a tiny corgi named Waffles, has been barking incessantly during the early morning hours, which is ridiculous, since Waffles is the laziest, quietest dog you could ever meet. The accusations are increasingly ridiculous, but Karen's paperwork is thorough. Every complaint is neatly documented with alleged dates, times, and details of the supposed offenses. She even sends out official notices that look more like courtroom summonses than HOA warnings that Karen's obsession reaches new heights when she starts presenting evidence of my violations. During an HOA meeting, she pulls out a thick binder labeled Noise Violations Log and begins flipping through pages as if she's preparing for a grand courtroom battle. The log includes charts, timestamps, and descriptions of noises allegedly coming from my property. March 3rd, 8:42 p.m., loud music, shouting, and general chaos reported. March 8th, 7:15 a.m., dog barking continuously for 20 minutes. March 10th, 10:30 p.m., sounds of heavy construction tools and yelling. The most outrageous entry reads, March 12th, 2 p.m., excessive laughter, highly disruptive to the neighborhood's tranquility. Seriously? Excessive laughter? Who does Karen think she is, the fun police? When I try to speak up during the meeting, Karen immediately shuts me down, insisting that her documentation is irrefutable. She even goes as far as to distribute copies of her noise violations log to every board member, grinning smugly as if she's just delivered the final blow. The other board members seem uncomfortable, but no one dares to challenge her. The icing on the cake? A $500 fine for repeated noise violations. The notice is signed by Karen herself. It's clear she's enjoying her role as judge, jury, and executioner. As if the ridiculous logs weren't enough, Karen escalates her crusade by enlisting allies, or more accurately, manipulating weak-willed neighbors into her twisted game. One evening, I find yet another letter taped to my door. This one accuses me of violating the noise ordinance yet again, but now she's included statements from supposed witnesses within the neighborhood. Apparently, Karen has been going door to door, knocking on houses and pressuring residents to sign statements about my alleged disturbances. Those too intimidated to say no reluctantly give her the signatures she craves. Others, hoping to avoid becoming her next target, eagerly provide the false testimonies. The statements she collects are as absurd as her previous claims. Constant loud music playing well into the night, rowdy gatherings filled with disruptive laughter, a reckless power tool use causing disturbances throughout the neighborhood. But Karen's favorite evidence comes from Mr. Pickens, a crotchety old man who lives down the street. He's a notorious complainer who's never been fond of me, or anyone else for that matter. His statement reads like a horror novel. The noises are endless. It's like living next to a zoo where all the animals are possessed by demons. Karen parades these statements like trophies at the next HOA meeting. She distributes copies to everyone present, practically foaming at the mouth as she insists that I am a menace to the community. Some neighbors nod along, either too scared or too annoyed to speak up. But I notice a few, the ones who actually know me, looking increasingly uncomfortable with Karen's over-the-top accusations. Karen's campaign against me doesn't stay confined to HOA meetings and notices taped to my door. Oh no, she makes sure the entire neighborhood is well aware of her so-called crusade. She posts passive-aggressive messages on the community message board, warning everyone about the serial noise violator disrupting their peaceful lives. Even worse, she starts sending out mass emails, cleverly worded to sound like official HOA statements, warning residents to remain vigilant against those who disregard the community's standards. The emails are riddled with vague but inflammatory language designed to rile people up. Phrases like willful negligence and blatant disregard for community harmony are peppered throughout. It's clear Karen is doing everything she can to paint me as a villain. I start noticing the occasional dirty look from neighbors who bought into her nonsense. My driveway even gets egged one night, no doubt encouraged by Karen's poisonous rhetoric. But while some are buying into her ridiculous smear campaign, others are growing increasingly fed up with her antics. A few of my neighbors actually apologize for the treatment I'm getting, admitting they've been pressured by Karen to provide false statements. Slowly, I start to piece together how far Karen is willing to go to enforce her petty dictatorship. Karen decides it's time to take things to the next level. She calls for a formal investigation by the HOA and impartial review of my supposed violations. But everyone knows the only person running this investigation is Karen herself. Her goal is clear: to gather enough evidence to force me into submission. A trio of HOA board members shows up at my door one afternoon. Two of them look thoroughly uncomfortable, clearly only there because Karen has somehow bullied them into participating. The third, Mr. Patterson, is Karen's devoted lapdog. The man would agree to ban grass if Karen said it was too green. They asked to inspect my property for noise-generating equipment. I suppress a laugh. Noise-generating equipment? This isn't a construction site. It's a backyard. But I allow them to look around, knowing full well they'll find nothing out of the ordinary. Mr. Patterson tries to act serious, taking photos of my lawnmower and even my kid's old skateboard ramp. I half expect him to pull out a decibel meter and start measuring the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Karen is clearly grasping at straws, but her sheer persistence is exhausting. To top it off, the so-called investigation concludes with a biased report full of vague allegations and exaggerated descriptions of my property. Karen even goes as far as to recommend that the HOA pursue legal action against me. Her glee is unmistakable when she announces this plan at the next HOA meeting. It feels like I'm being hunted by a power-hungry predator with nothing better to do than ruin my life. But I'm not going to back down. I'm just getting started. Karen's campaign against me continues to escalate, and I soon find myself dealing with constant harassment. One day, I come home to find yet another official-looking letter from the HOA taped to my front door. This time, it's a formal demand for me to attend a noise violation mediation hearing. The language is harsh, cold, and dripping with Karen's venomous touch. The letter claims that my supposed noise disturbances have reached unacceptable levels and that immediate corrective measures are necessary to restore community harmony. The kicker: I'm given just 1 week's notice to prepare. Karen's arrogance practically seeps through the paper, as if she's certain this will be her final move to break me. I can already picture her smirking as she orchestrates this farce of a hearing. She's stacked the deck against me, ensuring that her loyal followers will be present to back up her fraudulent claims. She's even managed to recruit Mr. Patterson to act as the so-called mediator, knowing full well he'll side with her no matter what. The hearing itself is nothing short of a nightmare. Karen sits at the head of the table with a smug expression, her clipboard in hand, eagerly taking notes as each witness gives their prepared statements. The same neighbors who signed her ridiculous noise logs are now repeating their accusations like trained parrots. Mr. Pickens, of course, gives the most dramatic performance of all, describing my home as a war zone of chaos. My attempts to present my side of the story are met with eye rolls and exaggerated sighs from Karen's cronies. Every piece of evidence I provide is dismissed as irrelevant or misleading. It's clear this hearing is nothing more than a staged circus meant to humiliate me and validate Karen's authority. When Karen finally delivers her conclusion, she makes it sound like a gracious act of mercy. She generously offers me the option of either ceasing all excessive noise activities immediately or facing severe fines and potential legal action. Her tone is dripping with condescension, as if she expects me to grovel at her feet and beg for forgiveness. But I'm not about to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I calmly inform her that I will be consulting a lawyer about the harassment I've been enduring. For the first time, a flicker of unease crosses her face, but she quickly masks it with a dismissive laugh. "Oh, by all means," she says. "If you want to waste your money on a lawyer, that's your choice. Just remember, the HOA has every right to enforce its rules, and I will make sure they're enforced to the fullest extent." Her arrogance would be laughable if it wasn't so infuriating. But now it's become painfully clear that Karen won't stop until I've been completely crushed under her iron fist. I leave the hearing feeling frustrated, but determined. Karen may think she's won, but she's about to learn the hard way that she's messed with the wrong person. Karen, clearly convinced her campaign is working, decides to go for the jugular. A formal letter arrives in my mailbox, typed and signed with a flourish that practically screams, "Power trip." It's a final warning stating that if I don't immediately cease my reckless disturbances and bring my property in line with the HOA as standards, she will personally ensure I face legal action. The letter reads like a manifesto of petty authority, a desperate attempt to scare me into submission. The document outlines a list of supposed offenses, each more laughable than the last. Apparently, my garage door creaks too loudly when I open it. My lawnmower is unnecessarily disruptive, despite only being used on weekends, and my backyard conversations are an infringement on the peaceful enjoyment of neighboring properties. Karen has even included another slew of bogus noise complaints from her so-called witnesses, most of which have clearly been coerced or outright fabricated. She's throwing everything she can at me, probably assuming I'll buckle under the pressure. But what Karen doesn't realize is that she's gone so far overboard, her antics have actually made it easier for me to fight back. If she's preparing for a war, then I'm gearing up for victory. By this point, I've had enough. I decide it's time to gather my own evidence, something that will leave Karen with absolutely no leg to stand on. I install security cameras around my property, capturing every inch of my yard and driveway. My goal is simple, to prove that Karen's complaints are nothing but hot air. Over the course of several weeks, I collect hours of footage. The recordings reveal nothing even remotely close to the disturbances Karen claims I'm causing. The videos show me mowing my lawn at reasonable hours, having quiet conversations on my patio, and most tellingly, living my life just like any other reasonable rule-abiding homeowner. But I don't stop there. I collect statements from neighbors who've been willing to stand up to Karen's bullying tactics. Some of them even provide written accounts of how Karen tried to pressure them into signing false complaints. As my evidence piles up, so does my confidence. Karen may have the power of the HOA on her side, but I have something far stronger, the truth. My opportunity for revenge arrives sooner than expected. Karen, feeling emboldened by her supposed airtight case, calls for an HOA meeting to present her findings and officially move for legal action against me. It's clear she expects this to be a victory lap, the final step in her quest to stomp me into submission. The meeting is held in the community center, and nearly everyone in the neighborhood shows up, eager to see the spectacle. Karen struts in like she owns the place, her smugness dialed up to 11. She wastes no time launching into her tirade, waving her file of falsified complaints and manufactured evidence like it's the Holy Grail. But as she's talking, I notice something interesting. The crowd isn't responding the way she expects. A few people nod along, but most look bored or even annoyed. Some of my neighbors are whispering to each other, rolling their eyes as Karen drones on and on. She's so wrapped up in her own sense of authority that she doesn't even notice the way the mood of the room is turning against her. Finally, when she finishes her rant and gestures dramatically toward me like she's handing down a guilty verdict, I stand up. I'm calm, collected, and most importantly, prepared. I announce that I have evidence proving not only my innocence but also Karen's harassment and manipulation. The room goes dead silent. Karen's self-satisfied grin begins to slip as I pull out a flash drive and hand it over to the HOA board members. I explain that I have hours of security footage showing my property being nothing but peaceful. I provide signed statements from neighbors detailing how Karen pressured them to sign false complaints. And as the final nail in the coffin, I reveal that several of the documents Karen presented were outright forged, her signatures clumsily added to statements people never even made. Karen's face turns an alarming shade of red as the board members begin sifting through the evidence. Her bravado crumbles like a cheap sandcastle facing high tide. But as much as I'd love to savor her downfall, I know the real victory will be in what happens next. As my evidence is reviewed by the HOA board members, Karen desperately attempts to salvage her crumbling case. Her voice, once full of arrogant confidence, now trembles with panic. She claims the recordings are fake, that the statements from neighbors were coerced, and that I'm the one harassing her. Her arguments are weak, frantically thrown together, without the slightest hint of credibility. Seeing her lose her cool is almost comical. Karen, who once strutted around with the authority of a self-proclaimed queen, is now babbling like a child caught in a lie. The room watches in stunned silence as she continues her flailing attempt to discredit me. The more she talks, the more unhinged she sounds. The neighbors who had been intimidated by her are now murmuring to each other, and some even start to openly laugh. One of the board members raises a hand to silence her ranting. Karen will review the evidence properly. But at this point, it's clear we need to address your conduct as well. These accusations are serious, and if proven false, you'll be held accountable. Karen looks as if she's been slapped across the face. Her mouth opens and closes, but no words come out. It's finally dawning on her that her power trip is over. For once, her authority is meaningless, and she has nothing left to cling to. The HOA board members announced that they will be conducting a full investigation into Karen's claims, as well as her actions. I'm given the chance to speak, and I calmly explain how Karen has been harassing me for months, trying to build a fake case to serve her own petty need for control. I hand over copies of my recordings, statements, and all the evidence I've gathered. The board promises a thorough review. As the meeting wraps up, Karen looks completely deflated. Her cronies, the few neighbors who had been whispering in agreement with her at the start of the meeting, are now awkwardly distancing themselves from her. The entire community has turned against her, and she knows it. But Karen isn't finished yet. Even after the meeting, she tries to corner me in the parking lot, spewing threats about how she'll ruin me and that I've made a terrible mistake. I simply smile and walk away, knowing that her words are nothing but desperate noise. The tables have turned, and the ball is no longer in her court. A week later, the HOA board releases their findings. The announcement is made via an official letter, which I read with immense satisfaction. The board found that Karen's complaints were baseless, her evidence fabricated, and her conduct nothing short of harassment. As a result, not only are all her claims against me dismissed, but she's also being removed from her position as HOA president. The board goes a step further, issuing a formal apology to me for the stress and inconvenience caused by Karen's obsessive pursuit. They even include a statement encouraging the neighborhood to come forward if they've been similarly harassed by Karen, promising action will be taken to prevent further abuse of power. The best part? Karen is also facing legal consequences for her actions, with potential fines and mandatory community service. The once feared HOA president is now a pariah in her own neighborhood. The neighborhood buzzes with news of Karen's downfall. People who were once intimidated by her now share their own stories of her unreasonable demands and threats. It's like the floodgates have opened, and everyone is eager to vent about her reign of terror. Karen herself is a shell of her former self. Her smugness is gone, replaced by a defeated, hollow expression whenever she's seen walking around neighborhood. She no longer struts about with her clipboard or throws her weight around like she owns the place. As for me, I enjoy the peace I've fought so hard to reclaim. The irony is delicious. Karen's own tactics have backfired so spectacularly that her reputation is completely ruined. No one takes her seriously anymore, and her days of bullying her neighbors are officially over. The cherry on top, I've recently been asked by the HOA board to help rewrite their community guidelines to prevent another Karen from ever trying something like this again. Poetic justice at its finest. Thanks for staying to the end. Like and subscribe for more Karen meltdowns. See you on the next one, everyone.